Welcome, everybody. My name's Neela. If we haven't met before, welcome. I'm in Belgium in my mom's house, and I normally live in Australia, where I have been living for the last 20 years. And in the last 3 years, since my father passed away, I've been spending more time in my homelands and spending more time with my mom. And we were just having a conversation over dinner about this practice actually, because I ran a retreat here in Belgium last weekend and it was wonderful. And we're still in the integration process. My mom also came to that retreat. It was her second time experiencing the depth of this work by coming to one of these retreats. And we were sharing our own experiences about it, that before the retreat, last week when we were both preparing and she was helping. She's incredibly creative, so she helped me with some of the decorations and other beautiful things. So during that process leading up to us going to this retreat space, we were bickering a lot and old things were coming up that we had between us, these things that you can have within your family. And it was so annoying. And we were on each other's nerves so much the whole week. And then we got to the retreat. And as soon as the field opened and the people arrived, and we did the first circle, and everyone put their name in the circle and checked in, we dropped into a different place together with everyone. And I want to speak to that because my experience where I'm still with that is that I feel a lot softer now. It's almost hard to imagine that we had that type of experience last week where we were bickering and getting on each other's nerves. It feels like we're reconnected to what truly matters, and all of that stuff that we were fighting about doesn't matter. And that is a beautiful experience to have with someone that you care a lot about. And something that I think a lot of people experience when they sit in a beautifully or well-held space, that the things that they were worried about or fighting about or just ruminating about drop into a different reality, and you can connect to your truth and remember what truly matters. And it's a lot softer. So that was something that we were just talking about over dinner. That was my little anecdote to start. And I would love to see where you are all based today, because I know a lot of people signed up from different places. So if you're willing to share in the chat where you are, I would love to find out. And what I will meanwhile do is bring up a presentation that I created to share with you today. Hey, people from South Africa, Georgia, South African in East London, San Diego. Hello from Portugal. That's just really wonderful. Welcome to everyone that's joining.
Well, if you allow me to, let me tell you what I understand about this meeting, which is the
Well,
first.
Albert, I'm going to
Yes,
interrupt you because there's a few of us, there's about 150 people here, and there will be an opportunity to share afterwards. So I'd love to get into the conversation. I'll tell you how it's going to run. We're going to do this for about 50 minutes, and then I'll share with you something about a training I'm running after where we'll go into deeper detail with this practice. And then afterwards, I'm going to do a Q&A, and you can stay on as long as you want. And then I would love to hear your perspective and also create connections between the people that are here. The Q&A is always really rich because a lot of people that come to these conversations are already doing this work. And so there's beautiful questions and opportunities to share from your own experience. It will also be recorded. So if you can't stay for the time after the hour, you can also watch the replay afterwards. So that's how I would love to run it. And I'm going to share my presentation with you. Maybe one sec. Okay, the art of holding space. Hopefully, after this hour, you know why it's an art. This photo here I chose, and you see me sitting there with my pink beanie. It was taken in the Netherlands 2 years ago, and I was facilitating a weekend for startup founders. And I chose this photo because I love the practice of space holding as a technology or a tool that is really valuable for any type of scenario. So it doesn't just apply to spaces like men's circles and women's circles, but can be applied in any given scenario. So I use it a lot with corporations, not-for-profits. It works really well with teenagers, and I have had a wide range of experience working with all types of different people from all types of different backgrounds. And I want to tell you a little bit more about that. The context for me is that holding space is a capability that we can all learn. It is relatively simple in nature. A wonderful technology for holding space that's been around for a very long time is Circle. I'll tell you more about that. And the practice of holding space is facilitation. So typically there is one or more people who are holding the space for the room that or for the conversation that is taking place. So it is a learnable capability that can transform every gathering or relationship. And personally, I've been doing this work full time for 8 years and have been in over 1,500 circles and spent a lot of time learning, facilitating, teaching. And I know that this technology, which I'm about to tell you about, is truly transformational. What is it? When we are holding space for someone, what we are doing essentially is creating the conditions for truth to emerge. It's offering a safe, non-judgmental space where people can be fully themselves and feel seen, heard, and supported. What that means practically is that, let's take the example of you holding space for just one person, because that's possible too. It would mean that you give that person the opportunity to share from the heart what is alive for them or what they are carrying on their heart without offering them a solution or without trying to fix them or do something about it. That's why I say it's a state of being, not doing. You are giving them a container to share the truth, a contained space of just you and them speaking, you listening. It's an act of radical presence. So there's no performance of sympathy. There's no, I'm going to help you with this, or this is what you should do, or here is my story that's similar to yours. There's a simple act of holding the story that the other person is sharing. It is making space for what needs to emerge without trying to control the outcome. The person who is listening, therefore, is listening to understand. They're not listening to analyze or to judge or to change anything about the scenario. And the outcome of holding space for someone to share their story truthfully without being interrupted is often that by the story leaving the body and them sharing it and just receiving a compassionate witness, something changes. They either have the relief of telling the story and being met without judgment, which is often different from how we think something will be received. Plus, often when you share a story in that way and people truly listen to you, you get new perspective. And by doing so, you have sovereignty. You might receive new information. You might be intrinsically motivated to make a different choice. You will feel seen and heard. A lot of benefits. This context is something I'd like to share because it really helps understanding why some spaces that we hold are more profound or more transformative than others. Most listening that we know in our current culture keeps us inside what we already know. And let's assume this is a model that was taught by Otto Scharmer. I'm going to share the resource in a minute. There are 4 levels of listening. The first 2 are the ones that we use the most or we are most used to. The first one's downloading. So we're listening to confirm our existing beliefs. Often happens. It's where we are most comfortable. We're only to hear what we already know or what confirms what we also think is important. Second, factual listening. So we're listening for facts, data, and differences. So it could be like a meeting you have at work. So you're listening because you need information and that's it. You don't really have any feelings about it. You're just receiving information. Then the next part is empathic listening. This is where transformational listening comes in and something new becomes possible. When we listen in this way, we are opening ourselves up to receive the story of the other without analyzing or judging. We're listening to understand. And as we're listening to the story of the other, we start imagining what it's like to be them. We enter the other person's experience and we start having feelings about it. And once that starts happening, we drop into deeper connection with them. It's very simple human reality. This is what happens when a circle is facilitated well or when someone holds space well. We're listening to someone's lived experience and we are imagining what it's like to be them and therefore dropping into a deeper connection. You can feel that shift happening in this space. The 4th level of listening is generative listening. This is once we've dropped into this empathic way of listening and a connection is established and there's this field of resonance that starts to happen in the room, then a lot of new things become possible. In the brain, what happens is once we start having feelings about a story we're listening to, the empathic side of the brain starts lighting up. And once that starts happening, then we go into the creative side of the brain that starts lighting up. And it happens in a group at the same time. Tests have been done. MRI scans have been done that prove this. And once we're in this generative way of listening, then we start having greater creativity and imagination. And that's where the conversation gets really interesting. And people have these experiences of like, whoa, it just happened. It feels timeless. I call that transformational listening. It happens really rarely in our current culture. And that's why it's important that this skill of creating transformational space for deep listening is passed on. So someone who's a skilled facilitator then knows how to design the right structure and questions for the people in front of them, knows how to set and protect an impeccable container. We'll get into what that means later. Create psychological safety without making comfort the main goal. I'll talk about that more too. And invite stories that move people beyond opinion. This matters. We want people in these spaces to talk about their own lived experience. That means that as a facilitator, crafting good questions is important. The level 3 and 4 of listening happen when people speak about their own lived experience rather than what they know to be true. So they don't give you a theory or they don't talk about what they read. or what they learned. They talk about what they experienced. That requires the right prompt or question. A skilled facilitator also knows how to read the field and respond to what is emerging. We'll go deeper into that as well. That means that you have to be someone that is attuning to what is happening and forming between the people and willing to change your approach. You might go into a conversation with a plan and you might have to throw it all out because something else is moving through the people. So beautiful when that happens. A skilled facilitator also knows when to intervene, when to stay silent, and when to change direction. And then the most important one sometimes is holding emotion, tension, and uncertainty without fixing, rescuing, or taking over. All of these things, if you are new to this work, you might think, wow, that sounds like a lot. I don't know where to start. And we'll go into all of these things one by one. They're not personality traits. These are all skills that you can learn. And that's why it's important to me, at least, that facilitators, people that hold transformational spaces, are trained to do so. One of the humanity's oldest technologies for connection is circle. If you think about it, every traditional culture in the world has people sitting around a fire sharing stories and passing talking pieces around. It's so beautiful that it has been around for so long, and that particularly in this time of really rapid technological advancement, we are reconnecting to these ancient ways of gathering that create human connection. I think it's one of the things we need most in this time in our leadership, to remember what it requires to gather people and to gather them well, to create true belonging, true community, to invite people into spaces where they can become more of themselves. What Circle as a technology, I love calling it that, gives us is a solid structure or foundation. It's an ancient universal way of gathering where every voice matters. There's no hierarchy in practice. It's more a listening practice than it is a talking practice, because say, imagine you're with 15 people in one circle, then one person is speaking at a time, and then that one person has to listen 15 times if everyone chooses to share. So listening becomes a collective practice. It creates these conditions for human connection that go beyond level 1 and 2 of listening. It unlocks and scales empathy in a group of people. It unlocks imagination, wisdom, and transformation. The beauty of the practice, as I like teaching it, is that it works in every setting. And I always say it's the leadership technology for the future. We have to remember how to gather people well and create spaces that focus on human connection, creativity, imagination, all of these things that we are at the fear of losing in this culture. Here's what becomes possible when we do it well. There's deeper connection. People feel seen, they feel heard, they feel less judged. When we are sharing from the heart and we're sharing from our own lived experience, which happens when a circle is facilitated well, then there is wisdom, new perspectives that become available. The quickest way to learn something is to experience it. The second quickest way to learn something is to listen to the lived experience of someone else. Because when we listen to someone share a story and the story moves us, we remember it. And then next time when we're faced with a similar scenario, we know what to do. or we have that piece of wisdom locked away somewhere. That's why in circle, it's so beautiful when there's a diversity of people from different ages and backgrounds, because we learn from each other. Transformation and healing become possible, and they become possible in a really natural way. I have had so many experiences of people simply sharing a story they've never felt safe to share and feeling like a new person afterwards, and not needing anything else than just being met with compassion, than just feeling like they belong to a group of people that deeply cares about them. Collective intelligence. I really love this, the possibility of gathering and finding wisdom between you, things between you that weren't possible on your own. To really drop into that synergetic group space where together you tap into imagination and creativity that you could never tap into on your own. And that becomes possible when we hold these spaces well. By now, you probably have guessed that a circle is not a normal conversation. In a circle, only one person speaks at a time. It's the same if you were holding space just for your friend or your partner. One person is speaking and the other person is listening. In a circle, everyone listens to the one person sharing a story. And once the story is complete, they can pass it to the next person, and that person shares. Every voice has equal worth, including the facilitator. To me, a facilitator is more a guide who is part of the circle. It's not someone who is above. It's not someone who is a sage on a stage, or someone who is teaching, or someone who is above everyone else. It's someone who is sitting in the circle with the people and occasionally guiding the conversation when needed. We value stories over opinions, and I shared the reason for that before. I don't know if you've ever sat in a circle or in a space where something feels off and you're like, this could be so much richer. Why is it not working? And often it is because people are sharing their knowledge and there's not that connection that happens because everyone's staying up here. And so a good facilitator knows how to ask the right questions so that people drop from their heads into their hearts and that natural resonance and connection starts to form. The power of the circle is that we witness each other with compassion. It happens automatically. There's no advising or fixing that happens. And I always say, when I set up a circle and I meet a group for the first time, I always say, in a circle, truth trumps greatness. It's really about sharing what's true for you in the moment that it is your turn. It's not about telling the best story. And when people are invited to share the truth in that way, and they feel safe to share the truth in that way, that's when you drop into those deeper levels of listening. And something that happens as a result of that, which is so beautiful and so magical, is that you drop into a different flavor or feeling of time. It doesn't feel chronological anymore. You might have a circle that starts at 6 p.m., but people come and the circle might be 2 hours. And it happens a lot that people afterwards say, wow, that felt like 5 minutes. Or vice versa. It felt like we were here all day. It's because when we enter a circle space, when it is facilitated well, we enter a qualitative space. The ancient Greeks had a different word for that time. We have chronos, which is chronological time, quantitative time, your dentist appointments and all of that. And then kairos, which is qualitative time. These are the moments that you'll remember at the end of your life. These are the moments of deep connection, of numinosity, of beauty. The meaningful moments of life happen in kairos time, and they often feel timeless. They feel like they were a lot longer than they were. And we don't have many ways of creating kairos time. Most of us are waiting for it to happen to us. And then we have a great story. Oh my God, I accidentally met this person, and then we went on an adventure and kairos time. But creating or holding space for a person is a way to create that type of time. I call that sacred time. So I've shared a little bit about what makes it different from a normal gathering, but we'll go into it a little bit deeper. A transformational circle or gathering has three elements. There is a container. That means the physical space, whether it be online or whether it be in person, the room, the fire pit, the computer, the laptop, the room that people are in when they're at home. It also includes the agreements that the facilitator shares. We'll go through them in a minute. The container is needed to create safety. It's the structure and the foundation of the space. The facilitator sets the container, so they organize the space. They make it beautiful if they want to do that. They also share the container agreements with the people so that everyone knows how long it's going to be, what's going to happen, what's expected of them, what the questions are, etc. The facilitator shares these agreements, but they also ensure that those agreements are honored throughout the time that people are together. The field is what emerges between the people once the container has been set and the circle begins. It is the mysterious intelligence that moves between us, that we cannot see but we can feel. If you've ever sat in a well-facilitated circle, you will know what I mean. You can feel this presence between people. It's impossible to create this if there's no strong container. We'll go into that a little bit more. So this container is the foundation. It is the space within which the field can emerge and within which the people can meet. It's the thing that gives form to what wants to emerge. And so one of the invitations for the container for me is always to be in a space, if you're meeting in a physical space, where there's no one else, it's private. So you're with a group of people and it's just those people. So no one's walking through that space. It's a private space. That is one of the ingredients of the container. When people are dialing in from home and we run circles online, I always say, try to be in a space where you're not interrupted or your family members are not walking through the room, so it feels contained. Other ingredients of the container are these agreements that I'm going to share. So one person speaks at a time without interruption. It's not mandatory to share. So as the facilitator, you might set an order, and a simple one could be, I will share first, and then we'll go clockwise, the next person, the next person, the next person, and we'll go around the circle. When people receive the talking piece or it's their time to share, they don't have to if they don't want to. It's optional. They can pass. We don't respond to what is being said, so there's no fixing, advice giving, no analysis that happens. Everyone shares from their own lived experience. So we start the sentence with I. I feel this way. This is what happened to me. The container is a confidential space. So I always share with people that whatever happens in the circle stays in the circle. It's a space in which we can share and we are together for that one moment. And then when the container dissolves, we go back to our lives and we don't share the stories that were shared in the circle with anyone else. So it's confidential. People are invited to be sovereign in circle, to feel whether they want to share or not. We let them have their sovereign experience. And I don't want to speak about that too long, but it could also mean that when someone is sharing a story and it's emotional for them, that we allow them to have that entire experience and that process. We don't interrupt them, we don't go hug them. We just allow for them to share the story and be in their own sovereign space whilst receiving that compassionate witness from others. And then finally, there's integrity with time. This really matters. I think that's also something that facilitators can do wrong, is to say that a circle is going to be 2 hours and then it's 3.5 hours or 4 hours. And it just creates, that for me creates this feeling of not feeling safe when you don't know how long something is going to last. So the container is also the time something is going to take and honoring that. Typically, when I facilitate a circle, or always when I facilitate a circle, I will set the container and I will take my time to do it. These are some universal agreements. In the circle facilitator training that I run, I go through this in a lot of detail in one of the modules for about an hour. What are all of the agreements and what are the things that you can tailor to your specific audience? Because sometimes we want to add things or change things. This moment is very important though, because it's what creates that space so that that deeper level of listening can occur. So when I meet a group for the first time, I take my sweet time with this. And I invite you to do the same. Then the facilitator is the person who sets the container and holds these conditions. But it's not the person who is the teacher or the sage who knows all the answers. The role of the facilitator is to set and protect the container. What that means is that you would share what the container agreements are. This is the way that this circle is going to run. And then throughout the time that you are together, you ensure that those agreements are being honored. So that would mean that if someone in the circle, for example, starts cross-talking or interrupting, that it's the facilitator's role to say, I'm sorry, we had an agreement to let everyone speak uninterruptedly. So please hold until it is your turn to share. It could also be that when you've invited people to share from personal experience and someone starts philosophizing, that you say, hey, I would really love it if you could speak from your own experience. Do you have an example of a time in your life where you ... The facilitator also models presence and honest sharing. In my work, I always teach that the facilitator is also part of the circle and shares, and often that means that we start. by modeling the length of the share or the depth of the share. I think that a good facilitator is a good storyteller too. This trait, the next one, the facilitator listens and works with the field, is very important. To me, the magic really happens in the space between people. So in the training, what we spend a significant amount of time doing is learning how to read and co-create with the emerging field. So as the facilitator, you set the conditions for the container and you hold the container. And then you're also asking the right questions. But sometimes the questions depend on what people share. So you might have a plan beforehand and you might have to throw that out because something else emerges in the group. And so you have to be able to be creative with that. So the facilitator is someone who is always listening. What are the themes in this group? What are the words that are recurring? What's alive for these people? What is wanting to move through them? And a good facilitator is able to read the field in that way and change their plan accordingly. I also always say that good facilitators are kind but fierce. And that means that we can interrupt when needed, when people are not respecting the container agreements. We're also keeping time. So for example, if we have someone that is sharing for 25 minutes and we have 15 people and we only have an hour, then we might have to say something after 10 minutes, you know. So we're timekeeping and ensuring that every voice is heard. We're timekeeping and ensuring that if we say something is going to be 2 hours, it's going to be 2 hours. I know that this masterclass is only an hour. In the training, we do all of this in detail. How do you do that? How would you interrupt? If, say, for example, you only have 20 minutes left and there's still 10 people, what do you do? All of those things are skills you can learn. The facilitator is never the guru. We let people share their stories. We don't comment on them. We don't give them advice or analyze what they're saying. And we encourage sovereignty. To me, a good circle is a space where people find their own answers. And if you set the container well as the facilitator, then the wisdom that emerges in the field between people is so potent that people know how to distill their own wisdom from it. We don't need to tell them what they need to know. In fact, telling people what we think they need to hear is robbing them of the opportunity to find it themselves. It's such a shame. What we want is people to have the insight or the epiphany on their own accord. And that's what happens when you set up a circle well. The field then is what emerges between people. When people listen deeply and the empathy scales within the group, and you can really feel that there's a drop that happens from the head to the heart. We call that the drop. It's like you could feel it happening in a group of people, and you start seeing the themes and the threads that form. I always say when a group comes together and we start sharing stories, it's like this tapestry starts weaving of my story with your story, and those threads connect. And you start seeing the different colors and patterns that start to emerge. And as a good facilitator, we're always looking for what is that? What is the particular quality of this tapestry and what wants to emerge so that we can spiral deeper into that? When we learn to work with that well, that's where we can really have those conditions for that generative type of circle where new things start to emerge and people have these amazing epiphanies and creative insights. And it's one of the great privileges of my life to hold spaces like that and to pass on the skill of facilitating in that way. I love it. Something that I always say is This skill of holding space well, of being a facilitator, is something that you can't really learn from a manual because working with the field is something that's alive. You can get the structure. I'm today telling you this is how you set a container. These are the agreements. These are some of the things that you need to know to facilitate a group. But in order to do that well, you need the practice. You need the practice of listening to the field, finding the themes, responding to it, having people give you feedback, etc. And your capacity to hold this grows over time. A manual can also not teach you how you're going to respond when certain things happen in a circle. You have to live it. As a facilitator, it is my experience that the people that come and train are also continuously expanding their own nervous system capacity to hold the full spectrum of human emotion. Because inevitably, when you ask people questions from the heart and they share from their lived experience, they're going to share beautiful things, but they're also going to share painful things sometimes. And it's a true skill to be able to hold that without judging it or intervening, but allowing for that process to happen and that healing to take place in a sovereign way for people. Psychological safety is something that is implied when you set a space up well. I used to work in a corporation and they would do these trainings on psychological safety, and it was the most painful thing, I must say, where there was all these slides about what it was, and at the same time, no one actually felt like they could speak the truth without being punished in that place. And what it actually is that you can belong to a group of people, speak the truth, take interpersonal risks, question the status quo, and sometimes make mistakes without fearing that you'll receive retaliation or humiliation or punishment. What it is not is toxic positivity or avoiding difficult truths or making everyone comfortable, preventing conflict or eliminating uncertainty. And what I find specifically right now in the time that we're in is that actually most of us are quite avoidant. It's just the nature of this time. We have so many ways to distract us. And so every time we feel a little bit uncomfortable, we might go on our phone and start reading a different story, or we go and open the fridge door and eat something. There's so many ways to distract ourselves from the truth of what we're truly experiencing that we don't have the capacity so more to contain our own experience and to be with the truth of what is truly happening. And so there's a lot of discomfort. So I think often when people now say, I feel unsafe, what they're actually saying is, I feel uncomfortable. And the beauty of this practice is that over time, we increase our capacity to sit with discomfort. And when you have sat in a circle before, you might also have experienced that someone else's story is difficult for you to hear. But when it's shared in a place that is held with compassion and has a strong container, then you will also know that you'll be like, oh, wow, I was able to receive that whole story without running away or going on my phone and just being fully present to it, and nothing bad happened. And by giving that people that experience over and over again, they get to increase their own capacity and become better, more sovereign people and better leaders. And even in a group scenario, I found too, I've worked with groups for long periods of time. So some groups I've worked with for 2 years, and corporations that I have as clients, capacity also increases over time because they know how to speak the truth and they don't fear retaliation. So when you have that type of culture, the capacity of the group increases too. And that's how you build a world-class team. Something that becomes possible in a good circle is that people feel like they belong, which seems like I think people think of circles or they think of well-held spaces as, oh, they're places of belonging, of community, etc. And this is true. And what I see a lot too is that often spaces of belonging focus on the belonging so much that people are actually required to abandon a part of themselves to belong there. And sometimes it's very subtle. And I think if you're a good facilitator and you're passionate about building culture from the bottom up, this is something to be aware of, to make sure that your spaces are spaces where people feel like they truly belong, but also where they can become more of themselves. So they're not hiding parts of themselves or they're not assimilating to belong to a group of people. A well-held space really holds that container well, so the dance between belonging and becoming is always there. Here are a few ways that this practice of holding space or sitting in circle can help build culture. It's very simple, and circle can do all of these things. If you want to build strong culture, strong community, maybe you have a coaching community, maybe you're a leader in a corporation, maybe you're someone who has a sports team. You build culture by making people feel cared for, that you're curious about what's alive for them. So you could have a practice of listening and checking in. Maybe after every weekend, what's alive? What happened? What's happening at home? There's an opportunity for people to share stories so we know what's happening and who we are. And that tapestry between us keeps becoming more colorful and more visible. Through the sharing of these stories, people also become aware of who they are within this particular group. Shared experiences. Traditional cultures have ritual. It could be having celebrations. It could be playing sports together. Things that you do together that feel timeless. Shared vision. You're all working towards something together, and you are aware of who you are. A great example is a sports team. You're trying to win the season, and I am the center back, and I know exactly what I need to do to grow into that role and to support my team better. And then the next thing is that I am recognized for that. There is a way that I am celebrated for my unique contribution that is part of a larger whole. And finally, repair. Also something we don't do so well in our culture, which is that something happens, I make a mistake, that there is an opportunity for me to repair. There's an opportunity to be heard and the opportunity for redemption. All of these can be done in a circle format. So I'm going to give you some tips and a very simple template that you can use with your friends, with your family, in your workplace. A very simple circle framework, a structure, if you will, is to welcome people and share the intent. What is the intention of your gathering? Do a short grounding practice. What I mean by that is create a door between what they were doing before and what you're stepping into now. I always say it's the door between Chronos time and Kairos time. And it could be a simple meditation. It could be a moment where you all take a breath together. It could be a moment that you all snap together. It could be the moment that you build a fire together. There's a moment where you create a divider between before and what we're doing now. Container agreements, like we shared before. So you, as the facilitator, would say, this is how we're going to gather today. One person speaks at a time, etc., etc. Then once the container has been set, you do a check-in. The check-in is the presencing of the truth as it is right now. Everyone in the circle or everyone in the group gets to share what's on their heart right now, what's alive, how are you? It could be a very entry-level one, like what's something you noticed today? It could be an icebreaker question, but we want to know what's alive today because as the facilitator, you're listening to the field, like what's alive for these people? What state are they in? Let's ask about the present moment. What's on your heart today? What's on your mind today? What's going on in your life? What chapter are you in, etc. And then once that has happened and everyone has shared, then you can go into these more deeper stories and you ask them questions, good questions that are in alignment with the theme, that prompt people to share from their own lived experience. This is what happened to me. This is how I see it, etc. And this is the larger part of the circle. So say this is a circle of an hour, then the stories would be 45 minutes. And then the witness round is the round where we make the tapestry visible. So we ask people, what did you hear? What's something that you're taking with you from what was just shared? And then you do that round, and then you can close. And you can close in many different ways. I always love doing it in a physical way. So we're all snapping, we're all standing in a circle, we're all blowing out the candle or putting out the fire. So there's this physical way of undoing this container. That's a simple framework that you can use. The way that you hold it is what the craft is. So the structure is really simple. The facilitator is someone who is grounded, is someone who can listen very deeply to what is emerging, who shares the container agreements and also guards them so that the container doesn't become what I call leaky, and is someone who keeps the time. Throughout the whole circle, the facilitator also models presence, tells stories, invites stories, asks good questions, and listens and responds to what's happening in the field. This is the true craft. This is what we teach in the Circle Facilitator training, which is so magical when you learn how to do that well. So it is simple, and there's also a practice to it. This work, and I'll stop sharing in a moment, I have been full-time learning, teaching, doing for the last 8 years, and have facilitated over 1,500 circles, trained 400 plus facilitators, and have traveled to many different countries. I can promise you that this framework, this blueprint works anywhere. I have ran circles with software engineers in China, in Saudi Arabia, in Dubai, many different countries, different backgrounds with children, with teenagers, and the structure is always the same and works everywhere. What I'm so passionate about is teaching people a structure, a blueprint, a foundation that is very solid and creates this psychological safety and the opportunity to drop into levels 3 and 4 of listening, whilst also being able to tailor it to the audience that they serve. I think that really matters. I don't think we need to teach circle in a way that's here is the, the template and this is how you do it. I don't want people to become a carbon copy of me. I want people to learn the blueprint and then take it and adapt it to the people that they and the community that they're serving. If you are ready to create these spaces or you're wanting to learn more, I'm going to tell you about the Circle Facilitator training. So if you feel sparked by this conversation and you're like, wow, I really want to deepen my practice or I want to learn this practice and become a skilled facilitator, then I have a 6-week immersive program that starts on the 7th of September. By the end of the 6 weeks, we meet every Monday at this time. You will be able to design a circle for your specific audience and set and protect that impeccable container that we spoke about. You'll know how to create the conditions for trust, for truth, for belonging. And most importantly, and I feel very passionately about this, is to learn how to read the field and respond to it in real time. You also will learn how to facilitate in a way that truly reflects your own unique gifts. So you'll have the opportunity to practice in real time with the people, the peers that are there in the training, and also receive more feedback about how they see you and what they think your unique genius is, and so that you can bring more to that in your own practice. This training teaches everything I spoke about today and so much more. It's really, really, really deep. There are 6 modules of an hour to an hour and a half that you will have access to indefinitely. We also give people an opportunity to send in questions every week. So you can send me scenario-based questions that I will answer and record videos. There's probably about 10 videos on the platform already from previous cohorts. So there's a lot of extra content there that can definitely help you on your journey of becoming this type of community leader that can hold transformative space. You will learn this architecture, this foundation, all of the different steps to creating an impeccable container. You will witness me facilitate in real time. So the way that I teach is through transparent leadership, where you are part of the circle and I show you why I choose the questions that I choose. You then get to design your own circles and facilitate in week 4 and 5 and receive feedback from me and from the others in your circles. And then you will also be able to refine your practice. It's a really immersive training. So this includes every week your learning modules that you can watch in your own time, these 6 live circles with me, guided practice and feedback, a 90-page manual that will have beautiful questions in it, grounding practices. It will have the history of Circle, all of the resource materials that you can possibly need. Amazing questions, everything in that 90-page manual. It keeps getting larger. And you will also get practice on how to craft good questions. Like, what's a good question versus what's not such a good question? What are the agreements? How can you tailor them to your audience? We work with trauma-informed and culturally aware foundations as well. And one of the things that people often tell me is their favorite part of this training is that these cohorts are really international. And typically every cohort has people from 10 different countries. We have small groups of 18 max, but you get to meet people from all over the world and listen to stories from people from different backgrounds than your own, which is really wonderful. This training has been going for a few years now, and people have started businesses. They have run retreats together and met on these trainings. So lots of beautiful things happen when you spend 6 weeks in Circle with a group of people that you haven't previously met. So this is for you if you are new to this and you want to do the foundations well, which I highly recommend. If you feel drawn to transformational work and you want to serve your community in this way, I always say get training. It's so important to do this in a way that is safe. If you are someone who already facilitates and you want greater depth and confidence, you will get so much out of this training too. It is really, really comprehensive. If you're someone who leads teams, communities, or groups, for example, in a corporation or a not-for-profit or a sports team, and you want to create that depth of culture that we spoke about, then this is a wonderful training for you too. The diversity of these cohorts is really beautiful, and we have people from always an opportunity to bring more to your leadership if you can introduce this type of listening. Final words about the training. It starts on the 7th of September for 6 Mondays. There's 2 live time zone cohorts. We have maximum 18 people per cohort. The investment is 1,350 Australian dollars. You can pay that over 1, 3, or 6 installments, and you will have unlimited access to these materials. If you pay in full before the 30th of August, then you get $150 off, and the code for that is Masterclass 150. It's always so wonderful to see how many people are curious about this work. It's truly changed my life, and is continuing to change my life and so many people around me. And I could not imagine having a better job. And I do really believe that this is the work of the future, and we need more people who can build culture from the bottom up.